Fellow Zambians, today I want us to talk about a very important subject that relates to how we survive as a nation. Business. Business, commerce, and trade are the cornerstones of any democratic country. But the citizens that engage in such business must be free to trade freely, to trade equally, to compete equally, and to coexist equally. No discussion in business can ever be taken without looking at the historical disposition of a nation such as Zambia. In Zambia, our business laws are controlled, regulated by what our colonial masters left for us as laws. And this is where the problem begins. Everything that Zambian businessmen want to do is regulated by laws and regulations that were left by our colonial masters. This is a big problem for Zambia must prosper. You have heard me say time and time again that Zambia must prosper intends to come and amend and change the economic laws of this country. The question perhaps is this: who are we as a people if we do not control our own laws, if we do not promulgate and change the laws that our colonial masters left? That question is going to be paramount in the 2026 elections. In the 2026 elections, I want to remind you, fellow citizens, that the following freedoms are going to be on the ballot. One, the freedom of speech will be on the ballot. The freedom of association will be on the ballot. Freedom of movement will be on the ballot. Freedom of association will be on the ballot. Freedom of conscience will be on the ballot. The right to privacy will be on the ballot. The right to life will be on the ballot. These freedoms and rights are enshrined in Chapter 3, which is the Bill of Rights of our Constitution. These are the freedoms that give us the right to do business and to trade with one another. But what did the colonial masters do? When they came to colonize Zambia, they came with their own laws, which they brought and superimposed on the Zambians. And therefore, when they left those laws. And these are some of the laws which are still operating in Zambia today. So how do we do business on colonial laws, based on colonial regulations, which have not changed so much? Let me speak as a lawyer. Today in Zambia, we have got very many different types of business. We've got manufacturers, we've got industrialists, we've got traders, we've got SMEs, we've got the simple men who do transportation, taxi drivers, minibus drivers, bus drivers, lorry drivers. We've got the common women on the streets who are vendors and hawkers. We have young men who are selling blocks, bricks, gates along the streets of Lusaka. We've got women who are running restaurants, they're running saloons, they're running a lot of what they call amatereto, just to earn ends meet. We've got professionals who are running clinics, who are running law firms, who are running all sorts of business. Yet, this is true. None of those businessmen in this country control the regulations on which they run their businesses. Most of these laws have been superimposed or imported from the colonial masters. How can you do business in an environment where the law and regulations you don't understand, you don't relate to? Why? Because culture is what makes the law. Our morals, our moral fiber, our ethics as a people, our traditions are very different from what our colonial masters want us to be like. Here's an example. Speaking legally, when a political player on the market is arrested, for example, and he's going to be punished from a legal perspective, the colonial masters want this man or this woman to go to prison because that's what the law says. Now, let me give 2 practical examples, maybe 3, so that you understand that that does not work in a developing country. We know for a fact that there are countries in this world where if one is arrested for corruption, all the government does is call in that person, sit with that person and tell him, we, from our records, it is indicated that you've probably stolen $100 million. How are we going to deal with this money? How much can you survive away from this money? So the government and this person tend to agree that some of this money, some of the assets must be returned to government, and the punishment is not infused in the criminal justice system. So that the government and the individual who is alleged to have been corrupt, there is a win-win situation. Why is this important? It is important because the government gets what it wants, the citizen feels punished, and at the end of the day, both the citizen and the government are going to move forward, knowing very well that whatever has happened between them has been settled. On the other hand, if a citizen is going to be said to have stolen $100 million, and he externalizes this money outside the country, and the government says, we have got these facts against you, and you convict him, he goes through the due process of the courts, according to what the white man has said, and you convict him. What is going to happen is the courts are going to sentence this person to perhaps 9 years, 10 years imprisonment for corruption. But let me tell you that as a lawyer, what will happen is the following. According to the Correctional Services Act today, which is basically the Prisons Act in the previous years, 1/3 of that sentence will be commuted for good behavior. So which means if it's got 9 years in prison, 3 years will be chopped off. That person is going to serve 6 years in prison. He's going to come out of prison after 6 years and still find his 100 million, 200 million, or whatever money he stole stacked up somewhere. He would have done his time. At that time, the government has no recourse to those funds, those assets, because it is done. That is the legal system the white man has left us. What has the government gained out of this? Besides, when this man or this woman you have convicted and sent to prison is sitting in prison, the government has a duty to feed him. The government has a duty to ensure that he's reformed. Therefore, he'll be going to read the books in the library in prison, or if he's hard labor, he'll be making blocks for the government. He'll be doing farming for the government, but the government won't have access to the money that is alleged to have been stolen or have been corruptly obtained. You have heard that there are these new courts called financial crimes courts, talking about crimes of proceeds of crime. What are you going to gain as a government? What are you going to gain as Zambian citizens by sending people to prisons for such offenses? I've given you how the law operates. 1/3 of whatever sentence is given by a magistrate or a judge is going to go for remission, for good behavior. And such people are not violent people anyway. So they will not even be committing crimes whilst in prison. There will be good behavior in prison. The prison system has a right to chop off 1/3 of his prison sentence. Once that is done, the money that he has stolen from the government or from the Zambian people will be waiting for him. Fellow Zambians, let us think of how we can get around this and circumvent it and ensure that the Zambian government has a win-win situation in the situation. I won't name a country, but I'll tell you that I know of countries, for example, where the government realizes that a citizen has been involved in crime, of corruption, of theft of public resources, or even he has built assets like universities, he has built flats, he has built houses, he has built hotels. Remember, the citizen has got employees who are Zambians or who are citizens of that country. You grabbing those assets, you're basically declaring people redundant. Is this what we want? Is this real justice? Is this going to help the citizens who are employed? I submit that those people who work for this corrupt person, this so-called criminal, are going to be suffering on the streets and they'll not make ends meet. It is my submission to you as Zambians that Zambia Must Prosper wants to rethink the economic laws of this country. Zambia Must Prosper wants to rethink the criminal justice system of this country. We want to come and deal with economic crimes against the nation in a very different way. We want to come and ensure that the businessmen are able to invest in this country and not take money out of this country so that this country can be impoverished. 3/4 of the people that are involved in financial crimes against the state of this country make sure that they take the money out of this country and they go and enrich other foreign lands, not this country, for the simple reason that they know that once they are arrested, the money will be taken away from them, so they take it out. Let us encourage that in financial crimes, businessmen are able to invest in this country without fear or favor, without fear that the system will catch up with them. But also this about businessmen. I want to assure all the Zambian businessmen who have taken money outside this country, who have invested in other foreign countries, please let us return the money that you have taken outside this country back into Zambia. It will not be the policy of Zambia Must Prosper to arrest willy-nilly every Zambian businessman. It will not be the policy of Zambia Must Prosper to arrest every businessman so long as he's got money above a certain quota. What am I talking about? No country in the world has ever developed by overtaxing its citizens. Let that sink for a moment. No country has ever developed by overtaxing its citizens. This is what Honorable Minister of Finance, Musokotwane, is doing. Here's an example. FIC recently reported that $3 billion has taken flight out of this country and has landed in some Asian banks outside Zambia. But here's a thought. The president of this country, Hakainde Hichilema, was very proud when he came back 1.5, 2 years ago from America, and he told the Zambians that they have managed to restructure the Zambian debt and obtain $1.3 billion from the IMF. Think about it. $3 billion has left Zambia. We go and borrow $1.3 billion from the IMF with interest and other conditions. How silly is this? Let that sink. Think about it. Let it sink into your minds. We are stealing from our own country $3 billion because this is what FIC told us through a report they gave to the American embassy. And we know it's a fact. And yet we go and borrow $1.3 billion. Are we making sense? What this tells us as Zambians is this nation is rich. This nation is wealthy. We as citizens must therefore see how we can put these resources, the wealth of this country, before the Zambian citizens, so that the citizens can begin to benefit from this money. And need I add that the $3 billion which took flight out of this country did not take flight during the PF reign. It took flight during the UPND reign. This is under Hakainde Hichilema's reign as president. Uwupupu wule chitika mu UPND. So, who is stealing? Who has stolen much more? And this is just from the FIC report. Let's look at commissions like CEC. These are commissions which are supposed to give Zambian businessmen, poor Zambian businessmen, SMEs, business loans. But how does this work in practice? If you've got an entrepreneur, for instance, who wants to go into aquaculture, he wants to go into fish farming, he wants to go into rearing of goats, pigs, name it, and he comes up with a business plan, which he takes to CEC, and he says, I want an economic loan for empowerment. This is my project, and this is how I intend to run it. My investment, for instance, is between 150,000 kwacha to 200,000 kwacha. This is what I can do. These are the projections, and this is how I can earn the money. Do you know what happens, fellow Zambians? CEC, because it's using the laws left by the Muzungus, the laws left by our colonial masters, the imperialists, is going to say, one, we need collateral. The figures and the numbers look good, but we can't give you money without collateral. We can't give you money without this, without this, without this, without this, without this. That idea for this businessman is going to die a natural death. And the poor Zambian who has invested his time, effort, and energy in producing the papers that CEC wants will walk away with a walk of shame, with no money in his pockets. And yet, the projections would have probably said in 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, he would have been producing 1 million kwacha. He will be able to pay back the loan. But because the laws and regulations are against him, CEC will not give him the money. These are the kind of laws that we need to change. These are the kind of economic laws that Zambia Must Prosper wants to come and attack and change, because they're not working for the Zambians. If 30, 50 women come together in a cooperative and decide they're going to start rearing chickens, and they're going to be putting together these monies and say we can produce 50 to 100 trays of eggs when the chickens are ready, and they go to CEC and say we can produce these eggs, this is the kind of investment we need. Please give us this kind of money. Instead of using the business as collateral, CEC, because it's using archaic, old regulations, they'll still demand, just like any other commercial bank, collateral from poor women who are Zambians. Where are the women going to get a house, 500,000 kwacha worth, or 1 million kwacha worth, for them to access 200,000 kwacha as a loan? Everything is skewed against the Zambian women. Everything is skewed against the Zambian youths. Everything is skewed against the business entrepreneurship of the Zambian mind. We are killing ourselves because of bad laws. Economic laws, such as land law, such as banking laws, such as immigration laws, such as commerce and trade laws, will have to be changed if Zambians are going to improve their livelihoods. There are businessmen who are involved in trade, for example, across borders. This is what the Minister of Finance has said. In reaction to the fact that FIC has told the Zambians 3 billion has left this country, Wamusokotwane goes and tells Zambians that we're going to impose a tax of 15% for every $2,000 that's leaving this country. How ridiculous is that? $2,000 as today's rate is almost 54,000 kwacha. So just for a Zambian to have 54,000 kwacha, you're going to impose a super tax of 15% over his money to take him to go and pay for a motor vehicle from Japan. Wamusokotwane, are you thinking? Are you really thinking? Do you really care about the Zambians? Those youths, those men and women who are involved in the car trade business, buy motor vehicles for $2,500, $3,000 from Japan, and the cars are brought here, and they make their profits because of that. You superimpose a 15% tax. This is the kind of government the UPND is. They don't care about you Zambians. And let me tell you, we as Zambia Must Prosper will ensure that this kind of taxation must end. It is not helping the Zambians at all. It is not helping the poor youths who are in the majority. The youths are 82.2% of this country in terms of population. And if they are put in a doldrum and told they can't even access $2,000 without being taxed, what kind of government are we running? What kind of nonsense is this? Let's look at the mines. They are the mines producing our copper, our cobalt, our minerals like gold, lithium, name it. What do we get out of there? They're on tax break. You want to superimpose taxes on your poor Zambians when you are allowing the super rich, big conglomerates to get away with taxes. This UPND government, I have said before and I'm saying again, does not care about the poor Zambians. The UPND government has no feelings. Ubuntun semuliba UPND tamwaga. I have given you examples of how many businessmen are suffering. But this is the assurance I want to give to the businessmen at large. We in Zambia must prosper. As a government in waiting, we want to assure you and tell you that as long as you're in Zambia, we shall re-look at the tax laws and change them. We shall re-look at the investment laws and change them. We shall re-look at the economic laws and change them for the benefit of the Zambians. Every economic law must benefit the Zambians first before it benefits a foreigner. That is how countries behave. That is how caring governments behave. UPND does not care about the poor Zambians. And let me tell you this. If you need to change the way you think, you must think about changing 1, your culture, changing 2, your belief system, 3, your family values, 4, your friends, and 5, your environment. If you don't change these factors, you will not improve as a nation. When the white colonial masters came here, when the imperialists came here, they brought their own culture, which they superimposed on us and left it here as part of our laws and our culture. We must change that because that's not who we are. Whatever laws we're going to come up with on the economic front will have to suit and benefit the Zambian businessmen. And we as Zambia Must Prosper are saying Zambian businessmen must always come first in whatever we do. Zambian women, Zambian youths must always be looked at first and given priority for opportunities if they are to prosper in this country. Remember, the country is going to be run by a political party called Zambia Must Prosper. Prosperity must always come first for the Zambians. Napita.